Hi everyone, this is Kyle, and I'm going to make another video about One Piece. And what I want to go into here is that while in my opinion, Hollywood, it is a bit of a creative wasteland right now, but you can get an occasional good adaptation of a story, One Piece being an example of that. And in my opinion, yes, Hollywood, the people in Hollywood, they are capable of making some good shows, making some good adaptations. However, if you ask me, it has to be approached a certain way. If you're a creator and there's interest from Hollywood in adapting your story onto the big screen, whether it be a show, whether it be a movie, there are certain things that you have to do in order to ensure that they actually do a good job of adapting your story. So right here, this is probably the most recent news that I've heard from One Piece. And this is from buyingintocomics.com. I'm not going to read the article. I'm just going to read you the headline. Netflix's One Piece co-showrunner reaffirms commitment to respecting the source material. If you're adapting something that you legitimately love, fight for what it needs to be. And I'm filming this video on the 17th of October, and this article, it came out the 7th of October, so a good week and a half ago, so it's been a little bit. But this right here, this is just the latest example where the people that are working on the One Piece show, they are saying all the right things. They are showing respect for the source material. I mean, I'll show you a few more headlines here from One Piece. This one came out the end of August. Netflix live-action One Piece showrunner says the most important lesson he learned from series creator Ichiro Oda was that getting too far away from the source material was not going to be good in any way. Again, saying the right thing there. Right here, August 30th of this year, Netflix live-action One Piece director on collaborating with series creator Ichiro Oda. I think it would be an insanity not to include him in every single decision that you make. And there are plenty of other quotes like this that I could show you, but I'm not going to. This is just a small sample. But the point is, the people working on One Piece, they've shown nothing but respect for the story. They've shown nothing but respect for the creator of that story. The people on the cast, they've shown nothing but respect, which I'm going to get to in just a second. Now with that said, I will show you another headline here. One Piece creator Ichiro Oda admits he was wary of manga's poor live-action track record. I acted as a guard dog to ensure the material was being adapted in the correct way. In other words, the creator of One Piece, he was very protective of his work. He was very involved in it. I mean, there are some other headlines I could show you about how involved he was, but everything was basically run by him. He had to approve of every change that they made. I mean, one thing they said was they're not going to be going forward with the story until he's satisfied with how they adapted it. So just for the record, the people that have been working on the show for One Piece, yes, they are showing nothing but respect. Yes, they are saying all the right things in interviews. I'm always going to question how much of that respect is genuine and how much of it is the creators directly involved, the creators looking over our shoulders so we can't put our fingerprints on this show at all. I am always going to wonder that. I mean, if Ichiro Oda, if he wasn't involved in the show, I wonder if the creators would be saying these things that, you don't want to get too far away from the source material, things of that sort. I'm always going to wonder that. But regardless, fans overwhelmingly, they love the show. They think that they made a good adaptation for One Piece, and the end result ends up getting a lot of people watching it, and it gets a second season, and there's no question that it deserves a second season. And if you ask me, the lesson that you take from this success here, in order for you to make a good adaptation, or in order for us to get a good adaptation of any kind of show or manga or comic or whatever, good adaptation of a book, anything, the creator of that show has to be involved, and the creator has to be very, very protective of his work. The creator has to have final say on every decision they make, and the creator has to make sure that they don't go forward with the show until they're happy, like what Ichiro Oda did. If you ask me, that right there, that is the formula. That's the way to make a good adaptation now. In today's wasteland that is Hollywood, in today's environment where the people in Hollywood, they're not entertainers, they're activists, and they want to inject their ideology into everything they get their hands on. This approach right here, the creator acting as a guard dog, that's how you prevent them from doing that. I mean, that right there is the single most important thing to get a good adaptation, is the creator has to protect their work. The other important thing, if you ask me, the people working on that show, the cast for that show, they have to be fans of that story. And I'm going to make some comparisons here between One Piece and a few other shows that came out. I'm going to start with The Witcher here. So, while the writers for One Piece, they're saying if you're adapting something you legitimately love, fight for what it needs to be. They think it'd be insane not to include the creator in every decision they make. They need to not get far away from the source material, and there's plenty of other good quotes that the people for One Piece have said. But while they've been saying things like that, I'm going to jump to The Witcher here and what we've been hearing about The Witcher. So a former writer for The Witcher recalls staff actively mocking the source material. So according to someone who was writing for The Witcher staff, the people that were working on The Witcher, so the writers, they were not fans of The Witcher. They did not have any respect for The Witcher. And what was the end result of that? The first season, people generally liked it, but as time went on, you got to the second season, people didn't like it as much, and you get to the third season, it was very poorly received by the audience. Now, you did have one fan of The Witcher working on that show, this particular individual right here, Henry Cavill. And he wound up leaving the show. I mean, there's a reason why. They were not respecting the source material. They were not respecting the Witcher story at all. And the one person that actually cared about the story, he's gone. And as a result, if you ask me, The Witcher, it's in trouble. And Netflix knows it. I mean, it was announced that Cavill was leaving, was it like before season 3 started? And Netflix had to remind people that Henry Cavill was still Geralt of Rivia. I mean, everybody loved how Henry Cavill played Geralt. Henry Cavill, I mean, he was very adamant about staying true to the original story. And I do wonder if Henry Cavill here, if he was not playing as Geralt on The Witcher, how much worse do you think the show would have been? I have a feeling it would have been a lot worse, and who knows, maybe it wouldn't have made it to a third season. I don't know, that's for you to judge for yourself on. The point is, the people on One Piece, they're showing respect for the original story, and according to word, the people working on The Witcher, they were not. And as a result, The Witcher, at least season 3, it's been very poorly received, and I don't think it's going to get any better with Henry Cavill gone. And I'll bring up another show also from Netflix, Cowboy Bebop. They didn't stay true to their story at all, and what was the end result? Cowboy Bebop canceled by Netflix after 1 season. And I'll give you another headline here from Bonding in the Comics. Netflix live-action One Piece EP Marty Adelstein reflects on failed Cowboy Bebop adaptation. What we learned is that fans are expecting you to be true to the source material. Now, I'm going to show you just a little bit of one interview here. I mean, this is with the actor for Monkey D. Luffy meeting Ichiro Oda. I'm not going to play this whole thing. It's about 4 minutes long. I'm going to go to the end here. But I'll play you just a little bit of this. Alright, I'm going to start it right here.
Dear Mr. Oda, thank you for creating One Piece and making so many people around the world happy. Playing Luffy is a dream come true, and I will always do my best to bring him to live action. Luffy is a friend for the world, who teaches us about courage, dreams, and family. I am beyond honored to be a part of this story, and me and the entire live-action team admire you so much. Thank you for One Piece, and thank you for Luffy.
Alright, I'll stop it there, but just look at how much respect he had for the creator for One Piece. And you look at how much respect he had for the story, you look at how seriously he took the role, and you look at how grateful he was to be playing as Luffy. I mean, I'm going to show you a couple interviews from some other actors, actresses, just as comparison here. Alright, I'm going to be going to Sophia Namvet here. She played the dwarf Disa in Amazon's Rings of Power show. I got a couple clips of her that I'm going to play. This one's going to be first one.
Tell me a little bit more about Princess Disa and the fact that you were the first black woman to be a dwarf in Tolkien, the first woman to be a dwarf in Tolkien. Well, what do we learn about woman dwarves that we didn't know through your portrayal?
Well, we learned that they exist.
We learn that they exist. I mean, really, she's essentially insulting Tolkien right here. You could say she's kind of calling Tolkien a sexist here, because there weren't a whole lot of women. There weren't any female dwarves in the story. I mean, there were in the world, but there weren't really any female dwarf characters in The Hobbit or in Lord of the Rings. And so her reaction, we learned that female dwarfs exist.
There.
And thank you so much, Angelique, for noticing and acknowledging the fact that this is the first time that we see a woman and the first time that we see a black woman in this area and this world and these works of Tolkien. You know, this is necessary. This is a revolutionary moment for cinematic and television, and it is an honor to be a host of that. What we see is a great amount of relatability with Disa. You know, she is.
So she's saying her made-up character is historic, is revolutionary, necessary, things of that sort. I mean, you talk about egotistical here. Alright, I'm going to give you one more clip here.
The generation that comes after us now, this will be their memory of Tolkien. This will be their memory of the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. And so we get to move that through and just be the beginning of this revolutionary moment for television, of course, the Tolkien franchise and work.
Folks, the whole saga of Rings of Power, the creation of the show and the fighting between Amazon and Tolkien fans, of all the terrible things that were said in interviews, whether by cast members or whether by showrunners or whoever. What she just said right here was the most sinister thing that I had heard from anybody working on Rings of Power. I mean, what she said, for the new generation, this is going to be their version of Tolkien. If you want a translation for that, we are revising Tolkien, we are changing Tolkien, and Amazon's goal is that the Rings of Power show is going to be people's first encounter with Tolkien. I mean, Amazon's goal is that when people look at the show that they made, the other abomination of Tolkien's work, their goal, Amazon's goal, is for people who watch that show to think that is Tolkien's work right there, when in reality, no, it is not. It was an utter vandalization of Tolkien's work. I mean, Amazon's goal, their goal is for you to forget about the timeless work of Tolkien, and they want you to think about the Rings of Power show when you think of Lord of the Rings. And they want you to associate that with Tolkien. Amazon's woke, utter vandalization of Tolkien's work. And I'll go back to this quote from Ichiro Oda. I acted as a guard dog to ensure the material was being adapted in the correct way. Well, in Lord of the Rings case, Tolkien passed away 50 years ago, so he's no longer able to defend his work. Tolkien's son Christopher, he died a couple years ago. He's no longer able to defend his father's work. And I'll go back to some of these quotes. Getting too far away from the source material was not going to be good in any way. Let's make a comparison here. Now I'm going to go to Vanity Fair, an article that they did on Lord of the Rings from, I don't know, a year and a half or so ago now. I got two quotes here I'm going to show you. Okay, first quote right here. It felt only natural to us that an adaptation of Tolkien's work would reflect what the world actually looks like, said Lindsay Weber, the executive producer of the series. And in here she's mainly talking about diversity and inclusion and representation and words like that, which, look, Tolkien's work, it is based on European mythology, European folklore. It was a story that he meant as a mythology for England. He stated that very explicitly. He lamented the fact that while the Norse mythologies, the Greek mythologies, the Epic of Finland, the Kalevala, they all survived through the years. The mythologies of England, they did not survive. They were destroyed by William the Conqueror during the Norman conquest of England, a good 1,000 years ago. Tolkien greatly lamented that, and he wanted to create a mythology for his home country of England. And then second quote here that I'm going to show you, this is from one of the showrunners. The driving question behind the production: can we come up with the novel Tolkien never wrote and do it as the mega event series that could only happen now? Netflix One Piece. Getting too far away from the source material was not going to be good in any way. Lord of the Rings. Can we come up with the novel Tolkien never wrote? And I'm going to make one other comment here. I'm going to go back to the fact that Ichiro Oda, he was guarding his show like a dog, as he put it. And on Lord of the Rings, Tolkien, obviously, he passed away. He can't defend his own work anymore. There was a Tolkien scholar, Tom Shippey, who was involved in the show early on. And there's a little bit of this in this Vanity Fair article. The show's resident Tolkien scholar, widely respected academic named Tom Shippey, gave an apparently unsanctioned interview to a German fan site in July, opining on what the show could and could not explore. Not long after that, Shippey was no longer involved in the series. Both he and the showrunners declined to say what had happened, but the obvious assumption was made by fans. It seems like the NDA is basically, if you tell anyone we can put you through a wood chipper. Wait, assumption made by fans that it was because he violated this NDA. No, we fans don't buy that for a second. There was a rumor that he was fired because he was, as it was put, Tom Shippey told Amazon routinely that they were polluting the lore of Lord of the Rings. It's just a rumor, but they absolutely have polluted the lore, and so yeah, it seems very believable to me. Now, fans overwhelmingly did not like the show. They say it did not at all match Tolkien's work, and what was Amazon's reaction? They called fans names, certain istophobe words. And while One Piece here had real high viewership and got awarded a second season, here, Lord of the Rings, this is Forbes.com, Rings of Power was a massive flop that most viewers gave up on. And according to this article, only 37% of the people who started the show actually finished it. That's only about a third, just over a third. Yeah, I mean, the Lord of the Rings show, Rings of Power, they're going to be in trouble for Season 2 if you ask me. Yeah, they got a second season. I mean, the original agreement was, I think, for 5 seasons, but do they deserve any more seasons? No, they do not. Not with the way that they treated Tolkien's work. And I'll go back to this one little interview here that the actor for Monkey D. Luffy did with Ichiro Oda, how much respect he showed for the work, how fortunately he felt to be given the role. Compare that to, say, this particular individual right here. Let's see what kind of respect she showed for Snow White.
2022 version of Snow White. What did you mean by that? I mean, you know, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
I mean, folks, the difference here is night and day. You know, and comments like this from Rachel Zegler, you know, they've pissed off a lot of people that love the original Disney Snow White movie. And the movie, as of right now, it comes out in March. I don't know, we'll see how well it does. I have a feeling it's not going to do that great. A lot of people don't think it's going to do that great. I mean, there's a lot of controversy around it, but that's another topic. But the point here is, everybody working on the show, they need to be fans of that show. Because people who are fans of that show are going to be far more likely to show respect for that show. I mean, the people that have been cast on One Piece, everyone from what I hear, big fans of One Piece. They love working on the show. They're all very fortunate to have roles on the show. I mean, folks, if you ask me, One Piece is the model for making a good adaptation of a story nowadays, at least in today's Hollywood environment. I mean, the creator, if they're still alive, they have to be very protective of their work. They need to make sure that the people in Hollywood are not going to put their fingerprints all over it. And everybody involved, the writers, the cast, the showrunners, they all have to be fans of the show. I mean, The Witcher here, they had one person working on the cast that was a fan of the show, but the writers evidently were not fans. The people working on Rings of Power, nobody involved in that show had any respect for Tolkien's work. They had one Tolkien scholar that was working on that show, but they fired him very early on. And Disney's Snow White remake, yeah, they're the person playing Snow White not showing much respect for the original story. The people working on One Piece, on the other hand, they show a lot of respect for the story they're adapting. And as a result, it becomes an overwhelming success. It gets awarded a second season. Now, granted, there are some people out there that are skeptical. I mean, Netflix, they've made some good first seasons for shows, and then things have kind of dropped off after that. I mean, The Witcher would be arguably one good example of this. But given that the creator for One Piece is still very heavily involved in the show, and given that the people working on the show so far looks like they're still saying all the right things, I don't think this is going to happen with One Piece. I mean, we'll see, of course. Everyone, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, if you consider hitting the like button, hitting the subscribe button, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you all very much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time. Take care until then.